All right. Good evening. Let's call the meeting of the Open Space Authority Board of Directors to order. 6:31. Want to call roll?
Director Kennett,
Here.
Director Flaher,
Here.
Director Chapman,
Here.
Director Annable,
Here.
Director Alexander,
Here.
Director Potter,
Here.
Director Gill.
At this point, I'm here. Aaron, are you going to be introducing new staff members?
Good evening. This is Aaron Aber, Natural Resources Manager. It's my sincere pleasure to introduce Rachel Clemens. She joins us from the city of San Jose and their Watershed Protection Division. And before that, with a frequent partner at Grassroots Ecology. She is here as our watershed restoration specialist, of course, in the Natural Resources Department. Her work is really about restoring wetlands, creeks, all of the flood attenuation we talk about here in Coyote Valley. So some of her bigger projects are, of course, helping us think through what we're doing in CV Camp and some of the restoration work we have going on right now down at the Pot Road, some of our other flood management work. So with that, Rachel, you want to step up to the podium?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to meet you. I'm Rachel. Like Aaron mentioned, I have a background in stormwater management with the city for a couple of years, and before that in habitat restoration with Grassroots Ecology. Did a lot of vegetation-based restoration, native plants, invasive plant removal, a lot of volunteer and outreach work too. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me at this meeting. It'll be interesting to observe and just see how one of these meetings functions. I'm learning a lot this first week about how the authority works and just meeting lots of really friendly and passionate people. So I'm really, really excited to be the new watershed restoration specialist. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Rachel. It's nice you're coming from the city of San Jose to us. Yay. Exactly. It's a good place to be. I think they really enjoy it. Before we go into closed session, I just want to see if there's anybody that wishes to make public comment. No public comment? Okay. All right. An announcement regarding the items we discussed in closed session will be made prior to closed session. At this point, we will adjourn to closed session.
Chair, if I may, I just want to reference there are two items on the closed session agenda. One is conference with legal counsel anticipated litigation, one item, and conference with real property negotiator. Both of those items are described in detail on.
Thank you.
For those of you who are joining us online, the Board of Directors have convened to close session. So they will return shortly. Thank you.
No, Madam Chair, we don't have any reportable actions, but I will note for the record that we are reconvening to closed session at the end of the meeting for item number 2 concerning conference with real property negotiation.
This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the board on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Or are there any public comments?
For those of you joining online, if you would like to be acknowledged, please use your raise hand function and I can call on you. You're in.
Right, then we will move on to approval of the minutes. They get a chance to read the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes as shown.
For second.
Second.
All right. I think Director Gill got there. Okay, all right, I'm reading my screen. Okay, so we have motion to approve the minutes, Director Kennett, and a second by Director Gill. We have a roll call, please.
Director Kennett,
Yes.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Annable,
Yes.
Director Alexander,
Yes.
Director Potter,
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Approval of the consent items. Is there any member of the board that would like to pull something from consent? If not, it goes in one action.
Move approval of the consent items.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the consent items, moved by Director Potter, seconded by Director Alexander. Call roll.
Director Kennett,
Yes.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman.
Yes.
Director Annable.
Yes.
Director Alexander,
Yes.
Director Potter,
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Yes. All right, now we're on to new business. I will make sure members of the public have the opportunity to comment on any matter on the agenda. Speakers are again limited to 3 minutes. I believe for item number 1, we are going to allow a little bit longer time, at least 5 minutes for anyone wishing to speak. So I will turn this over to General Manager McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Directors. Before you for your consideration is a resolution of necessity to exercise the power of eminent domain to acquire agricultural land in Coyote Valley. The 4.6 acre parcel in question is adjacent to the authority's 60 acre property on Santa Teresa Boulevard at Laguna Avenue. The property is surrounded by agricultural land, much of which has been protected from development at great public expense. The owner seeks to develop a compound on the property with 3 houses, one exceeding 8,000 square feet, and 2 garages. The state of California, Santa Clara County, and the authority have adopted strong policies to preserve agricultural land in Coyote Valley. Development of this property would be inconsistent with those policies. We ask you to find that acquisition of the property is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act and adopt the resolution of necessity to preserve it as open space and for active agricultural production. The only issue for consideration today is whether the authority will acquire the property by eminent domain. The price the authority will pay to acquire the property is not at issue. If the authority acquires the property by eminent domain, the authority is required to pay just compensation to the property owner, which is defined as the fair market value of the property. A jury will determine the fair market value of the property at a trial in the eminent domain lawsuit. I'd next like to talk a little bit about the property in the Coyote Valley context. As shown on this map, the property is located in the center of Coyote Valley, the last undeveloped valley floor in the San Francisco Bay Area, surrounded by agricultural land and adjacent to the authority's 60-acre agricultural holding located at Laguna Avenue and Santa Teresa Boulevard. The assessor parcel number is 712-18017. According to the U.S. Geological Survey geographic database, the property consists entirely of prime farmland. This is a view of the property looking north along Santa Teresa Boulevard across the Fisher Creek floodplain toward the North Coyote Valley Conservation Area and Santa Teresa County Park. This is a view of the property looking south across the floodplain toward the protected lands of Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve and Tilton Ranch, with the foothills of the Santa Cruz Mountains on the right. The property lies in the heart of a greenbelt between the cities of San Jose and Morgan Hill, is surrounded by actively farmed land on the valley floor, which you see in green, grazing lands on the foothills framing the valley in yellow, and 1,500 acres of land that has been conserved for wildlife habitat and agriculture, including 473 acres in the Mid-Coyote Valley. And these properties are outlined in green. In 2019, the state legislature established the Coyote Valley Conservation Program, AB 948, designating Coyote Valley as a resource of statewide significance based on its irreplaceable conservation values and multiple benefits, including wildlife habitat and connectivity, conservation of water resources, flood protection and climate resilience, agricultural production, public recreation, public health, and cultural values. Agricultural working lands in Coyote Valley are an important part of our local economy and the region's climate resilience solutions. This map shows land acquisition transactions totaling 1,500 acres in the AB 948 Conservation Program area, completed by the authority and conservation partners, including the Peninsula Open Space Trust, the State of California's Department of Conservation, the State of California's Wildlife Conservation Board, and the State Coastal Conservancy, Santa Clara County, the Valley Transportation Authority, and the City of San Jose. Over $120 million of public and private funding has been spent on these transactions, which have largely been completed within the last 4 years with strong public support. Why has there been such significant public interest, public policy, and financial investment in protecting the Coyote Valley? As detailed in the staff report, there is significant public support for protection of agricultural lands and conservation values in Coyote Valley, as reflected by numerous public conservation plans. Since the 1970s, the Santa Clara County General Plan has included numerous policies referenced in the staff report that address the importance of preserving contiguous agricultural land in Coyote Valley, limiting residential development on such land, protecting habitat corridors for wildlife migration, and protecting scenic transportation corridors, including Santa Teresa Boulevard. In 2014, in its Santa Clara Valley Green Print, the authority identified conservation of Coyote Valley landscape as one of its highest priorities. Coyote Valley offers multiple conservation benefits, including providing wildlife connectivity for more than 1.1 million acres of core habitat in the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Diablo Range, where there has already been a $3.5 billion public investment in a 500,000 acre regional network of parks and open space. In 2018, the Open Space Authority and Santa Clara County completed the Santa Clara Valley Agricultural Plan with support from the state of California. This Board of Supervisors adopted plan identifies Coyote Valley as one of the most important agricultural sub-areas within the Agricultural Resource Area of the county, or the ARA. The ARA concludes that protection of Coyote Valley from development is critical for climate mitigation, climate resilience, and other environmental benefits. The ARA also finds that Coyote Valley has been a major producer of agricultural specialty crops, including Asian vegetables, mushrooms, leafy greens, and walnuts that would be threatened by development. In September 2021, the authority launched the Coyote Valley Conservation Area's Master Plan, a multi-year planning effort to enhance and restore wildlife connectivity, wildlife habitat, water resources, regenerative agriculture, climate resilience, and equitable opportunities for public access to Coyote Valley. On December 14th, 2021, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors unanimously adopted amendments to the county general plan supporting the protection of Coyote Valley as a regionally significant landscape. The amendments established the Coyote Valley Climate Resilience Overlay District to limit non-agricultural development in Coyote Valley to preserve agriculture and natural resources and support climate resilience. Among other things, the amendments establish a maximum lot coverage of 7,500 square feet per parcel for non-agricultural structures and require that new single-family homes on agricultural parcels of more than 5 acres be supportive and ancillary to on-site agriculture. The proposed development of the property would disrupt and defeat the objectives of these planning documents. And now I'd like to describe the proposed development. On August 9th, 2021, the Andrades purchased the property from Zanker Road Resource Management for $800,000. The Andrades paid $200,000 cash to Zanker and executed a promissory note for $600,000 to Zanker, secured by a deed of trust. At the time the Andrades purchased the property, it was 5.1 acres. On October 5th, 2021, the Andrades submitted a planning development application to the county for construction of a single-family house and 2 accessory dwelling units on the property or the proposed development. The application was deemed incomplete by the county. In June 2022, after the county had adopted the climate overlay, the Andrades conveyed a half-acre strip of their land along Santa Teresa Boulevard to the county, thereby reducing the area of the property to 4.6 acres, thus avoiding the climate overlay's requirement that single-family houses be ancillary to agriculture. The Andrades subsequently submitted revised plans for the proposed development with a reduced parcel size of 4.6 acres, an 8,465 square foot primary residence, plus detached 3,160 square foot garage, and a separate ADU with an attached junior ADU and garage totaling 2,095 square feet. According to Andrade's application, the total impervious surface area of the proposed development would be 26,702 square feet. Because the property is now less than 5 acres, the climate overlay does not require that the proposed development be supportive of or ancillary to agriculture. As a result, the county could approve the residential compound of the size the Andrades propose for the property. Once constructed, this is what the submitted elevations of the structures would look like. This elevation is of the residence itself. This slide is the elevation of the garage and the ADU. The authority and other conservation entities plan to spend millions of additional funds in the future to implement the Coyote Valley Conservation Area's master plan, which is underway, including restoring wildlife habitat, riparian corridors and water resources, enhancing wildlife movement, investing in climate smart agricultural production, and creating opportunities for equitable public access, environmental education, and tourism. If the authority does not acquire the property, development of the property with a large residential compound is likely. The proposed development would be built on prime agricultural land in the heart of 1,500 acres of conserved land in the Coyote Valley. Because the proposed development would effectively eliminate agricultural use of the property, contribute to the loss of high-quality farmland, disrupt the Santa Teresa Boulevard scenic corridor and the rural character of the area, interfere with safe passage for wildlife across protected lands of the Coyote Valley, and because the property fronts on Santa Teresa, a busy roadway, it is ill-suited for residential or other urban development. The significant public investment in the conservation of Coyote Valley and the goals of AB 948, the Santa Clara Valley Green Print, the Santa Clara Valley Agricultural Plan, Coyote Valley Conservation Areas Master Plan, the County General Plan, and the County Climate Overlay would be undermined. To protect the public's investment in Coyote Valley as a center for wildlife, water resources, agriculture, and nature-based and agriculturally based tourism, staff recommends that the authority acquire the property. I'd now like to talk about the negotiations for the authority's purchase of the property. On March 1st, 2022, the authority sent a letter to the Andrades notifying them that the authority was interested in purchasing the property and that the authority intended to conduct an independent appraisal to determine the fair market value of the property. The Andrades did not respond to the authority's letter. On May 5th, 2022, the authority transmitted a follow-up letter and email reiterating the authority's interest in purchasing the property. The Andrades also did not respond to this letter. Meanwhile, the authority retained Chris Carnegie, MAI, to appraise the fair market value of the property. Mr. Carnegie concluded that the fair market value of the property was $950,000, $900,000 for the land, and $50,000 in costs incurred by the Andrades in connection with the application for the proposed development. On April 18th, 2023, the authority sent a letter to the Andrades offering to purchase the property for $950,000, the full amount of Mr. Carnegie's appraisal as required by state law. The Andrades rejected the offer. On May 30th, 2023, the authority sent another letter reiterating its offer. On June 1st, 2023, Edgar Andrade telephoned the authority's special counsel, Andrew Schwartz, to discuss the authority's offer. Mr. Andrade and Mr. Schwartz spoke again by phone on June 13th, 2023. Mr. Andrade and Mr. Schwartz were unable to come to an agreement for the authority to purchase the property. On July 20th, 2023, Mr. Schwartz telephoned Mr. Andrade and attempted again to negotiate a voluntary purchase of the property, but was again unsuccessful. The Andrades have not indicated an intent to sell the property or make a counteroffer to the authority. Accordingly, staff urges the board to consider exercising eminent domain. Now I'd like to talk about findings required for eminent domain. To acquire the property by eminent domain, the authority is required to make the following findings related to ensuring the property and preservation of agricultural land in the Coyote Valley as called for in the Santa Clara Valley Green Print, AB 948, the Santa Clara Valley Agricultural Plan, the County General Plan, the Coyote Valley Climate Resilience Overlay, and Coyote Valley Master Plan, all of which taken together are the project for purposes of this eminent domain resolution. So the findings are the following. Number one, the public interest and necessity require the project. Number two, the project is planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. Number three, the property is necessary for the project. Number four, the authority has offered to purchase the property for the full amount of its appraisal. Each of these findings has been satisfied as described in the staff report. The expansion of the authority's Coyote Valley land holdings through the acquisition of the property satisfies each of these requirements. Now I'd like to talk briefly about environmental review. In accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, the acquisition of the property qualifies for numerous categorical exemptions: Class 25, Class 17, Class 13, and the common sense exemption as described in the staff report. These exemptions are sufficient on their own or in combination to preclude the necessity for further environmental review under CEQA. None of the exemptions that preclude the use of categorical exemptions apply here. In conclusion, staff recommends that the board find that the acquisition of the property is exempt from environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act and adopt the resolution of necessity authorizing the acquisition of the property by eminent domain. To pass the resolution of necessity, the board will need at least 6 votes in favor. If the board adopts the resolution of necessity, the owner may file an objection to the eminent domain action with the County Board of Supervisors within 30 days after the board adopts the resolution. If the owner files a timely objection, the Board of Supervisors would consider whether to approve the eminent domain action by a majority vote. If the authority proceeds with the eminent domain action, the parties may still agree on a purchase price out of court at any time during the proceeding. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to the board. Thank you.
There we go. At this point, I see we have a couple speakers on Zoom and we have a couple in person. So I think, shall we take the Zoom speakers first?
Mr. Andrade is here via Zoom. Oh, Glenn Block is also here. His hand is raised.
Whatever order you prefer.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? This is Glenn Block.
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm here with Edgar Andrade. Our firm represents Mr. and Mrs. Andrade with respect to this matter. Just briefly, I'm going to let Mr. Andrade speak first, but I wanted.
Mr. Block, can you lean into your microphone, please?
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Start talking?
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Before Mr. Andrade and I speak directly regarding this, I did not hear whether there was a report out from closed session.
Did you want to answer that one?
There were no recordable actions from closed session.
Thank you. The property is not for sale. There was no negotiations and there will not be negotiations regarding this property. Mr. and Mrs. Andrade object to the Open Space Authority's attempt to improperly and unlawfully seize their property forcefully. You have not met the legal requirements. You cannot meet the legal requirements based on the evidence presented thus far. And Mr. and Mrs. Andrade will defend their private property against this unlawful attempt to seize it to whatever extent is required. Edgar, I know you're on the line. I think you wanted to say something to the board this evening. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Good evening. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Edgar Andrade, and I'm here on behalf of my family, the Andrade's family. I'm truly am shocked by where we are today because this has caught me by surprise. My family and I have worked very hard and have put a lot of our dreams into this property just to be in the position of which we have to fight at this time. And my daughters, my son, my wife, myself, I have 3 children, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 8-month son. And we have a lot of plans for this land and memories that we want to establish here together as a family. And it truly it breaks my heart to have to be here defending myself and my family in this way when I know that there's a lot of development in this area. There's a lot of houses already in this area, and they're not tract homes. These are all custom homes. I'm not trying to do anything that's outside of normal. I'm just trying to have a normal life with my family, and that's all we're trying to do, the Andrade family here in this parcel. Mr. Block, go ahead.
Mr. Andrade, can you just talk briefly and explain to the board your history with Coyote Valley and why this property is important to you?
Yes. So I grew up in Eastside San Jose in a poor family, and I used to ride my bike miles on end every day. And one of the places that I used to like riding my bike to, just to fish, was the Coyote Creek. We would go and fish in these small ponds. We'll take the trails. We'll pack a few snacks, some water bottles, and just get on our bikes and ride for hours. It was always a great experience for me as a child, having these memories, and I would like to develop and build memories similar to the ones I've had or better here in this parcel with my family.
Thanks, Edgar. So, private property in California and in the United States is sacrosanct, and it is vehemently guarded by the Constitution, the American Constitution, and the California Constitution. And what you are seeking to do tonight, to use the power of eminent domain to stop someone from building a home, is not what anyone has intended. And it is certainly not something that the citizens of California or San Jose or the county of Santa Clara would authorize or sanction. As Ms. McKenzie stated in her presentation, this acquisition is solely targeted and directed at Mr. and Mrs. Andrade and their efforts to build a home on the 4.5+ acre parcel that they purchased in 2021. That is not the intended use of eminent domain, or even the authorization for the Open Space Authority in this circumstance. Contrary to Ms. McKenzie's presentation, there has been no project defined or identified this evening. There is a recitation of some plans and a statute. That is not a project as required by the eminent domain law. Thus, without a project, this board cannot consider and identify the evidence that would support any of the required findings under California Code of Civil Procedure 1240.030 and 1245.230. So that's the first problem. And that problem starts with this board with its authorization of eminent domain and the staff report. It is clear that this is not a proceeding where the board is set to exercise discretion and reasonably consider evidence. This is a dog and pony show. The decision has already been made. And that is improper. This is not a question of whether or not open space should be preserved or the validity of the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. This is a specific issue related to this particular property. The suggestion that the construction of a single-family home on this property that is entirely consistent with home sites throughout the property, including a block away just to the northeast, to the southwest, to the south. There are homes like this and development of property exactly like this. And that is entirely consistent with the open space within the Coyote Valley. It is not going to disrupt a scenic corridor. It is not going to interfere with the open space authority's mandate here. It is not going to interfere with wildlife use, and it is not a property that's ill-suited for development. It's not going to interfere with tourism or any other agricultural things. It is entirely consistent with all of those things. Nothing will be undermined. The authority and the other agencies' investment in preserving other portions of the Coyote Valley will not be undermined or jeopardized. This is a targeted effort by the Open Space Authority to deny Mr. and Mrs. Andrade their right to build this home. If, in fact, this property was so crucial and important, then the Open Space Authority had the opportunity multiple times when it was offered for sale, when it was listed for sale, to purchase it. In fact, the open space made a half-hearted effort to acquire the property, making a lowball offer that the property owner rejected. Instead, they accepted a full market offer from Mr. and Mrs. Andrade to sell the property, which they did. Mr. and Mrs. Andrade proceeded to do what they planned. They hired professional consultants. They found out what the requirements, the legal requirements were for the construction of the home they wanted to build. They dedicated the land that was required to be dedicated along Santa Teresa Boulevard.
Mr. Block, your time is up.
Oh, Mr. Block, your time is up.
I have one more comment. I appreciate that, if you'll indulge me. There was a comment about this climate overlay. That was enacted after the Andrades submitted their proposal and their plans. These plans are consistent with all applicable laws. In fact, the presentation misstates what's going on. There is a reference to the 7,500 square foot footprint for construction under the subsequently enacted climate overlay. And you'll see that the footprint is actually well within that 7,500 square foot thing here. This is not the construction of 3 homes. It's a single family home with accessory dwelling units for other family members, Mr. Andrade's father-in-law and other family members that will be living here. This is a development that is consistent with the existing development. It is consistent with the area and preservation of open space. And Mr. and Mrs. Andrade should be permitted to continue to do this. I strongly urge the board and the authority to allow Mr. and Mrs. Andrade to exercise their private property rights, to build their home, and to move on, and for the authority to move on and direct its attention to otherwise. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Andrade is happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Block, thank you for your comments, and Mr. Andrade, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to make a public comment?
No.
Okay, then let's take the public comments in person. Mr. Muirhead?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. For the record, my name is Doug Muirhead. I live in Morgan Hill. I'm not going to opine on your decision tonight. But regardless of what you decide tonight and the probably following lawsuit or lawsuits, I do think that you at a future meeting need to help us understand what I find is a radical shift between what I and many others have believed for the last decade, which changed when I read this agenda item. I don't remember 30 years ago, I was living in San Jose, and I don't remember whether anyone mentioned that the Enabling Act had granted you the power of eminent domain. I do know that after moving to Morgan Hill, in the last decade of my interacting with this board and the committees and the staff and using the preserves and general interest in open space preservation, that time after time, you said to us, we only work with willing sellers. In fact, not to make life hard for Mr. Landgraf, but he did a presentation to the Special Districts Association on Monday. And one of the first slides will line in is we only work with willing sellers. So I really need you to explain to us going forward what working with willing sellers means when you have the power of eminent domain, and you've shown tonight that you may, on special occasions, choose to exercise it. So that's all I have to say. I was surprised, and I hope to better understand what you mean by your words going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice Kaufman?
Good evening, Madam Chair and directors. My name is Alice Kaufman. I am Policy and Advocacy Director for Green Foothills. I'm here tonight representing not only Green Foothills, but the entire Protect Coyote Valley Coalition, which is a broad coalition of environmental organizations, indigenous tribes, and community leaders, all dedicated to the protection of Coyote Valley. And I want to go back a little bit and talk about some history, which Andrea McKenzie covered a little bit, but to talk about the history of the long fight that the environmental movement and the community has had to protect Coyote Valley from the development that threatened it for decades. For a long time, it seemed as though all of Coyote Valley was ultimately going to be paved over for development, and that very little of it would be left as open space. And that began to change when you, the Open Space Authority, began to partner with the city of San Jose and with Post to take action, bold action, to acquire and protect and permanently conserve almost 1,000 acres in North Coyote Valley, which was fully supported by the community as shown in the vote on the ballot measure that provided $50 million for that funding. That was over 2/3 of the voters who voted for that. You again saw the support of a wide range of the community when the city council in 2021 voted to change the general plan for North Coyote Valley, to change the land use and zoning from industrial to open space and agriculture. Again, the people who supported that were not just environmental groups. We had the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. We had labor interests. We had housing advocates. We had, again, indigenous tribes. We had racial justice advocates, educators, farmers, people from all over the community, as well as over 2,500 people who emailed into the city to say, please protect Coyote Valley. That's the kind of support that your actions in protecting Coyote Valley and the city's actions have received over the years. And I want to talk a little bit about the climate overlay resilience district that the county enacted and the intent behind it, because it doesn't prevent all development, but what it does, what it was intended to do, was to prevent the fragmentation of the landscape that how harmful that is for wildlife. How when landscapes are fragmented, it's not just the acreage that is converted from open space to development that is lost. It impacts all around the area. When we chop up wildlife habitat and when we chop up farmland into small pieces, it has a much greater impact on the viability of that landscape as wildlife habitat and wildlife connectivity, and also for farmland. Thank you.
Thank you. One more call for public comment. Anybody else who's not put in a speaker card or raising their hand on Zoom? Okay, we'll close the public comment, take it back to the board. I'll open it up for any comments from any of the board members. Five, no? Nope. Nope. Okay, no questions or comments from the board. At this point, maybe we will put it to a vote.
I make a motion that we support the action to begin the process for eminent domain. That's the resolutions that have been presented to us this evening. And I'd also like to compliment staff and the excellent report. They just did a really great job with it and giving us the history and the government statutes so that we can look things up ourselves. Thank you.
Second.
Any other comments? So we have a motion from Director Annabelle and a second from Director Potter. We call for the vote.
Director Tenny.
As you know, I'm against the concept of eminent domain. But as you also know, I firmly believe in what our agency stands for and have always voted for what's best for the organization as a whole. Thus, I'm voting for the OSA to proceed with the Andrade resolution because of the protectors, as the protectors of community value. We shouldn't let Andrade's actions set a precedent for others. Thus, I vote yes.
Director Flaher.
Yes.
Director Chapman.
Yes.
Director Annabelle.
Yes.
Director Alexander.
Yes.
Director Potter.
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. At this point, I think we're going to take a couple-minute break just so we can stretch our legs. And we'll be right back. Thank you patiently. I know we have a presenter in the audience. We look forward to hearing in just a few minutes. Thank you. We're back. Thank you for allowing us a few minutes to take a break. We now have an informational item, a presentation from Rohan Pandit, Executive Director of Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. I've been looking forward to this one. Welcome, Rohan.
There you go.
I want to thank Andrea for inviting me today to speak to the board of directors about the work that we do at Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. Thank you. Appreciate it. Should we get? Great. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. So my name is Rohan Pandit. I am the executive director of Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action, which is a Santa Clara County and San Mateo County based youth climate nonprofit that I'll talk more about our mission. And so yeah, getting into our mission and goals. The goal of SVYCA is truly to empower our youth in both counties, right? So our teens and young adults combat climate change through impactful interdisciplinary policy and education initiatives that we can push forward. So how do we do this? We do this through 3 prongs, right? First prong is to empower and educate our youth, which is, I know is a general term, but really we want them to feel empowered to think that they can make it and take a leadership role now. So what does that exactly look like? I'll talk a little bit more about our model and its effectiveness soon. But basically, a part of this prong is actually giving them the interpersonal skills and the 21st century skills that are necessary in order to understand the climate crisis and how to combat it and go forward. But it's also really to the granular level, understanding the climate policy solutions that are necessary at a local level, a regional level, and a state level. We don't dumb anything down for our youth. Our second prong is the youth's impact on climate policy itself, right? So I already mentioned that, but how do we do this? We build relationships with key stakeholders in the community, if it's nonprofit leaders, agencies, elected officials, city council members, city staff, to try and coordinate and ensure that the youth perspective is not only included in progressive climate measures going forward in our community, but also, making sure that it benefits the whole of the community as well. And the third prong that we focus on that we're really proud of is our climate career pathways, I should say, exposure. And I should mention most of our youth are early high school, late high school, early college. So getting that exposure at that age shifts the lens completely of what they could major in college, what they could go on to do in their careers. So we try to, provide them with resources to understand the available pathways as much as possible, whether it may be they're interested in STEM careers, if they're interested in design, policy, advocacy, what have you. There's a lot available to them that we try to make sure that they know is available to them. So just briefly, I want to talk about our organization structure, just to give some context, because it leads into what our model is later on. I'm obviously the executive director, and I report to our board of directors and our senior advisor. And then with me, I have a leadership team who typically, there's seasoned youth who really understand how the organization works. They've been with us for 2-3+ years and are typically in college, and have been former leaders in the organization. The point that I really want to get to, and I'll talk about it soon, why our model is really effective. We have a co-team lead model that is youth-led completely in each of our cities and advocacy teams. So these co-leads are really empowered to start taking over initiatives and push forward climate action that they believe is necessary in their respective jurisdiction. Talk a little bit about how we actually recruit our youth. We could do it in stages. Stage 1, we recruit motivated youth typically through our programs and events that we host, which again, I'll talk about a little bit later. Once we have them, we really emphasize training them, right, and onboarding them in the right way. Once that they have the climate policy knowledge necessary to be able to move forward, but also that they're guided in their own climate journey, whether it may be through team advisors, which I didn't mention earlier. Each action team that we call them, they're led by team advisors along with the co-leads. Our team advisors are typically policy experts in their field. So we'll have, an adult in the room to guide them through their own journey as well. Stage 3, the action teams, which I talked about, and this is about execution, right? Advocacy strategies on the ground in the respective jurisdictions. They're building relationships in the community with stakeholders at the nexus of creating real change in climate. And stage 4 is if they continue to grow and stay with us, there's a lot more room to gain exposure through events that we participate in, career exposure, and more partnerships available to them, and they can become a part of our leadership team. So to talk a little bit about the actual action teams, right? Just a brief overview of some of the cities that we have. So we're represented in 8 cities in the county, a couple of cities that are missing that we're working to scale up and be represented in. And we also have 2 county teams that are focused solely on regional and county advocacy. And then our actual dedicated advocacy teams. We've had a transit team in the past that's done great work on that end. We have a state and federal advocacy team, and soon I'm hoping we want to be able to expand with more resources to have an energy advocacy team and a nature-based solution / conservation advocacy team, which is a big reason of me being here today, to ideally maybe partner with OSA in the future on nature-based solutions and conservation efforts. I should mention that our youth are really interested in scaling pocket forests as a solution in the school district level and throughout the county, especially in our cities that already have climate action plans in place for urban foresting, but it's not always well defined, so we could really push for that. So just talk a little bit more about why we believe in our model and why it's really effective. I've said it already, but we really empower our youth, right? We want to give them hands-on opportunities to learn and advocate. Our team advisors and our leadership team and myself host workshops bi-weekly, monthly for them to learn more about climate policy, how they can get involved, how does government processes work, and we'll have key community stakeholders and our partners come and give talks on the policy solutions that they're working on as well. We also want to give them we want to be able to empower them to take measures on their own, right? And we want them to be proactive. So the youth's ideas in our organizations are actually empowered. As long as they communicate everything with us, they can run with an idea and go with it. A good example of that, our San Jose action team this past summer, we had 4 youth who were really interested in developing a climate literacy workshop. There's nothing in our parks and recreation programs. There's nothing in our libraries. There's nothing in our school districts right now that's solely dedicated to climate literacy. And they wanted to be able to teach it to our K-5 youngins, right? And they developed this workshop and actually reached out to the San Jose libraries and partnered with them. And they taught, I think, over 100 students this past summer. And we're looking to hope we scale that operation out too. Some of the other things that they could learn, obviously leadership and public speaking. A lot of our youth, I used to work for Senator Josh Becker. He always used to say when 20 youth show up to a city council meeting, everybody perks up, right? So that's part of our strategy. We show up, we give public comments, they learn how to organize, they learn how to really make an impact. Going off of that, while this entire process is going on and when we recruit them from a young age, they get exposed to all the different varieties and sectors and issue areas that all fall under the climate umbrella, right? If it's water policy, if it's as niche as that, or it's conservation, if it's the energy crisis, if it's attending a transit job panel, right? So they get exposure to all those types of things. 21st century skills. And really our youth, we have over 100 active youth throughout the county, throughout both counties, I should say, who are really engaged and know their stuff. But our youth have also made quite the impression on other organizations we presented to because they're really civically engaged. And then other people in other organizations have actually reached out to us to try and even replicate just that aspect of our model, right? How do you get your youth to be as civically engaged, to understand, hey, when is your city council meeting? What kind of impact can you have? Things of that nature. So to talk a little bit about, I know I talked about our model, but talk a bit about some of our impact and recent success. It's completely been a volunteer-based organization until I came on as the ED in May of this year. Our inception was in 2019, and just 4 years, we're able to create 8 city county action teams that have helped cities adopt climate action plans or create climate action plans. I should even say you could look up the Morgan Hills City Climate Action Plan, and 2 of our youth are quoted in actually creating the action plan because they advised the city so much on it. We've also done the same in Sunnyvale and Cupertino and San Jose. We've advocated for REACH codes in San Jose. In other cities, we've advocated for natural gas ban ordinances, which is absolutely critical going forward in our need to electrify. We've advocated even for the creation of the Sustainability Commission at the county level and in San Jose. Our state team has helped pass legislation and sent letters of support to over 30 state bills across energy conservation, climate resilience, renewable energy, what have you. And Senator Cortese, who's always been a partner from the beginning with us, and recognizes for our efforts, secured $2 million to the county specifically for the Youth Climate Initiative to be advanced and empowered, because we need to do more in our schools to be teaching about climate change. We need to be able to support organizations that are doing that work on the ground. Again, I already said it earlier, but all this has only been in the last 4 years based on a volunteer-based effort. So a little bit about some of the stakeholders and relationships that we built. This is our strategy, right? We build relationships with key stakeholders who work at the intersection of important climate legislation and impact, whether it's through elected officials from the local level and the state level, nonprofit leaders who specialize in certain issue areas, school district officials who can actually create systemic change for our youth to come, or climate tech leaders that we actually partner with at a significant level as well, who have an important role to play in actually scaling the necessary technologies that we need in order to fight climate change. I want to talk a little bit about one of those partnerships. We at SVYCA, it took us a little while to get there, but we have a partnership with our Fremont Union High School District. For those of you who don't know, that high school district serves primarily Cupertino and Sunnyvale students, also Saratoga and Los Altos. But we really believe in it. It is an innovative and effective model, first of its kind type partnership that's going to be able to impact over 10,000 students, right? So it's about a systemic change and shaping the way that our students will need to look at the future and think about career paths and solutions. So we're partnering with them over the next 3 years to develop a pilot program that'll create a model to incorporate climate literacy into all academic subject areas at the high school level, which is going to be incredible. And while this is happening, the model actually incorporates and further educates our young people on the climate crisis, to think creatively about solutions, and where do our emissions come from. But not only just that, they'll also be exposed to civic education, which we know is lacking in a lot of our school districts, climate action and green career pathways all at the same time. And we think that this model is also really going to be effective because it empowers FUHSD students and teachers. We bring teachers to the table, coordinators to the table, other educators to the table. And we're also going to be partnering with industry leaders in developing this curriculum too. Our local CCAs, such as Silicon Valley Clean Energy, San Jose Clean Energy, Silicon Valley Power, Peninsula Clean Energy, and climate tech leaders that we work with extensively as well. We're at the forefront of these issues. We want them to have a say in how this curriculum is built, because they're the ones also developing the technologies that we're going to need to combat the crisis. I should mention that the goal for this curriculum is for it to be open source, right? So once it's really fledged out, we're going to be able to impact students, not just in FUHSD, but throughout the county, potentially even the state. That's the goal for this program. And that in and of itself can impact students from underserved areas and low-income areas who don't have the resources to be able to join organizations that can empower them and teach them about climate change in and of itself. We need to be able to get that into our schools. I should actually, before I move on to the next slide, I should mention that a part of this initiative is to try and incorporate, and OSA might take an interest in this, try and incorporate pocket forests at the school district level. And we want that to serve as a model that other school districts can replicate too. And even from this partnership alone, earlier this spring, we applied at the state for Green Ribbon School Program. And this was our first year applying, and we received the silver level, which is pretty substantial. It takes some time to get there, but through this partnership, we were able to get there. I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of our relationships with climate tech and industry. We've really built a robust coalition throughout time with some of our local, I think it's 25% of all climate tech startups in the country are based in the Bay Area naturally, right? So we should be able to tap into that and make sure that our youth are thinking about, okay, if I am interested in STEM, if I am interested in technology, what can I do to impact climate change? What companies are out there doing the right thing, right? So a big part of these partnerships and relationships we're building is specifically those industry leaders at the at the cutting edge of the climate technologies, like I mentioned, that we're going to need. But another part of this is to try and build a climate tech council, if you will, to advise not only on our curriculum that I mentioned, but also to be able to provide mentoring and internship opportunities for our youth so that they can continue to grow through their own climate journey. Again, just another graphic to kind of, OSA is on there under Climate Allies, I should say. Thank you very much for supporting our summit earlier this summer. But this is just a breadth of some of the partners that we've been able to kind of build over the last year through the nonprofit sector, the public sector, and the private sector. The goal, we're really trying to expose our youth as much as possible to how you create impact in all three areas and how do they all connect, right? Speaking of which, I want to give some insight into some of the programs we actually put on. For those of you who don't know, the biggest of which is our Youth Leadership Summit we had this past July at De Anza College. We had over 250, almost 300 students, climate tech leaders, elected officials, county and agency officials, student activists come and join us that day. The model of that day is really based on empowering our youth and teaching them about climate policy. So we had 3 panels that they could choose from: an energy policy panel, transit policy panel, and circular economy solutions, which OSA's very own Lena served on. So thank you very much for that. And then we transitioned into another prong of ours, which is really important, our climate careers panel, right? So we had climate based, which is essentially kind of the LinkedIn for climate jobs. You can look it up later. Elemental Accelerator, which is a nonprofit venture capital firm doing great work at the Nexus of Climate. They were all great partners that served on our panel, but the goal of that was to expose our youth as much as possible. And then the second part of the day of the summit was actually breakout sessions with these key community stakeholders. We divided it by each action team, right? These hyper-focused action teams that are really focused on impact in their regional areas. So we had, Assembly member Ash Kalra joined the San Jose team, right? We had, I'm forgetting, a San Mateo City Council member join the San Mateo County team, right? We have Senator Cortese joined, right? And a bunch of other elected officials and mayors that I'm forgetting right now, Mayor of Sunnyvale, Mayor Cupertino. So the goal of that is to really encourage our youth and show them that they can make a difference, but also they were able to light the fire under some of the stakeholders that were able to come, right? And advocate, hey, why don't we push for EV charging and solar at our school district level? Why aren't we able to get pocket forests in our cities? Why aren't we able to get REACH codes, et cetera? We need to adopt a more progressive climate action plan. So these are all the things that they're thinking about at a really, really young age. I also want to talk a little bit about one of our other big events is our Climate Career Bus Tour, which we had in August this past year. I've already talked a lot about the importance of exposure, especially at that age, right? The goal is, again, to have them be thinking critically and meaningfully about the career paths available to them, the company, and give them hope that, hey, there's a lot of great companies that are doing good work out there. And it could be, whatever your discipline is, you can still make an impact. It doesn't have to just be in policy or advocacy. You could be an engineer and still make a difference. If it's systems and materials engineering, software, what have you. If you care about technology, there's a lot of climate tech companies doing that work. We visited IDEA, which is a global leader in design consulting in San Francisco, and we have a lot of youth who are interested in design. They were going ballistic being able to tour that company, right? Circular economy solutions, building trades, which is incredibly important, right? And we have a lot of youth who are interested in that too. So the goal of this event and a lot of other events that we put on is to try and expose them as much as possible. To go in briefly into some of these other events, because I don't want to take up too much time, we're working on, don't know if it's the nation's first, but certainly the Bay Area's first climate tech hackathon in the spring of next year, which is going to be able to bring together a lot of STEM focused and interested youth at the high school level, maybe even early college level, who want to make a difference and think critically about climate solutions in the tech realm. We're going to be able to send a youth delegation to COP28 this year. Thanks to the summit funding, we really want to be able to advocate and combat fossil fuel interests. The UN has prioritized having the youth perspective at the table. I believe we're the only delegation in the Bay Area that's sending youth, right? So that's really important, besides our universities, I should say. We have Climate Speaker Series monthly. I mentioned this a bit earlier, but this could be anywhere from job fairs and having them think critically about career exposure to as niche as transit policy and urban planning, water policy, what have you, anything that falls under the umbrella of fighting the climate crisis. We want to try and expose them as much as possible. Other things that we do, actual education and policy training, resource sharing amongst our youth, especially from those on our leadership team who are in college, taking courses on this, sharing it with our younger ones so that they're thinking about these. They're reading white papers at age 14, 15, which is really cool. Which is awesome to see. We also want to scale and focus a little bit more on door-to-door campaigns, pledges, things that could really get out, or we want our youth to get out there in the community and advocate for solutions that they believe. They've done that in the past, but we need to be able to do more. They've done city council candidate forums, and we've also worked with FUHSD and other school districts on Earth Day outreach events. And FUHSD put on this year the first Earth Day festival, which hadn't ever been done at the school district level. And the goal for that is to be an annual recurring thing where youth at the school district level are exposed to green career paths, as well as becoming more climate literate, right? Finally, you know, it's also really important as a youth organization for young students to bring together as much as possible our youth. A lot of our youth are really like-minded, and they're compassionate about the environment, they care. But they all also are youth who take initiative, right? They went out of their way to find us. They did their homework. They're out there in the community, focused on climate action and whatnot. So a lot of our organization is, of course, youth-driven and youth-led, but we want to be able to create and foster community for our students who have similar interests and are like-minded towards the same cause, right? And a lot of our leadership team who started with us in the beginning of 2019, they're still great friends to this day, 4 or 5 years later. And that's a huge part of what we do too, they have these relationships going into college. So they always have a network to kind of lean on. They're going to need that infrastructure if they're going to be able to tackle these big problems, right? Our generation is going to be the one to have to do that. I'll try to keep it quick. I know I've talked a little long, but thank you very much. I just wanted to give everybody an overview, just a brief overview of everything that we try to tackle at SBYCA. But we really do believe in our model, and our youth are really motivated. They attend top schools to focus on tackling these solutions that we need them to tackle. I always say, I got this quote from Springsteen, but we need to be fighting optimists, right? And more than ever, our youth need to be fighting optimists. So that's really the focus of our organization and our mission. So thank you very much for your time.
Wow, thank you.
Great. And if anybody, was there a part for questions or did I take too much time?
No. Does anybody on board have any questions for Roland? Any comment? Okay, Director Kenneth.
You said that enthusiasm is contagious, so I can see why you're successful. So congratulations, that was great.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. You made me smile a lot of times during the presentation, and I really appreciate your hands-on approach and your skills training. I think your organization's going to go far. Thank you very much.
I have a question for you. Have you been out to one of our preserves?
Not yet. No. We've talked, Andrea and I.
All right.
Yeah, when it's time for that. That's it. The goal, we want to be able to scale. We need more resources, but we want to be able to scale to have an action team solely dedicated to nature-based solutions and conservation, right? So that is the goal.
You have some experts in this room.
100%.
Aaron and
100%. I know.
And Andrea. And,
Yeah.
Mark, I think they would be, and I'm not going to speak for them, but making a suggestion that maybe, a youth-led hike might be, something to look forward to, because, you give me hope. Because I know sometimes I've been doing this for a long time, my colleagues have been doing this for a long time. And sometimes, it's hard.
Right.
And you're fighting forces that don't always agree with what we feel is the right thing. And we're leaving this planet to you.
Mm-hmm.
I have kids, I have a grandson, and I look at some of the choices and I'm like, oh my gosh. So you're giving me hope, and you're giving me energy that what we're doing, we can fight for the good fight.
Absolutely.
You're along with us.
Absolutely.
So please reach out anytime.
Thank you.
If you didn't know that, I also work for a council member. I was representing District 2. So if I can be of a resource to you, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. Yes, Grandma.
I'd like to get a copy of your slideshow. You can email it to us.
Happy to send that.
I'd love to share it with the broader community, because
Right.
you're kind of planting the seeds for tomorrow. These seeds we can for you here, and I'm stoked about this. So
Thank you.
Just a very exciting program, and pretty amazing what you've done.
Really appreciate that. And I only briefly kind of covered how when we recruit our youth, how we actually empower them and organize them. But yeah, we have a pretty, we're high tech. A lot of our youth are high tech. We got them on Slack, on a Trello with project manager software. They're thinking about how to combat things. They're communicating with each other constantly. They're adding their friends to get them involved. So there's a lot of traction there. So thank you.
But sometimes showing up is good too.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Are you in comment?
Yeah, very excited with what you can tell we like seeds and planting seeds. It's
Yep.
our logo. I represent downtown and East San Jose on this board, and please let me know how I can be a resource for you as you try to reach into the east side of our valley.
Yeah, that's a huge priority. I mean, one of our board of directors, actually, Peter, found us when he was at the Ensign College, Peter Pham, and he's from Eastside San Jose. He's gone on to grow so much to the organization. He's serving on a UN health commission because he was able to attend COP28 as a part of Berkeley Coalition last year. And yeah, he's grown tremendously. So
Here's our question to you. How many acres do you think we've protected so far?
how many acres of
Open Space Authority, you know,
I don't. This I'm not great with pop quizzes, but
30,000.
30,000. Okay, that's good enough.
And counting.
Okay. Right.
Rohan is an impressive presentation, and you guys are doing a great work. So congratulations, and try to do the best in future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Staff want to comment? I see both.
Sure, I just want to thank Rohan. I feel like we've become fast friends, and I want to give a shout out to former CAC member Dave Pichelle, who really connected us. And it was just our pleasure to be able to send Lena Ian to the Climate Leadership Summit that your organization put on. And so we would love to work very closely with you to develop your new program in nature-based solutions and deepen our partnership. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming down tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah. Dave's been a team advisor for the San Jose team for a long time, since its inception. So we do our best to recruit real experts in the field to, mentor our youth. So thank you though. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Like, really inspiring presentation. Thank you for your work. And yeah, there's a lot we can do proactively in terms of partnership.
Right.
And another way we could potentially help those capacity is through our urban grants program. So many of your initiatives are absolutely tailor-made, about goals and objectives of that program. So take a look at that too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you all. Looking forward to coordinating.
Next item is an informational item on Open Space Authority fiscal year 2022-2023 fourth quarter financial and work plan update. How are you doing?
I'm still here. Okay. Hi, good evening, directors. Tonight we're reporting on the final quarter of fiscal year 22-23. The first section is the work plan status update. By the end of the fourth quarter, and that's the period running from April 1st to June 30th, the authority completed 12 of the 36 declared projects. Now, since it's the last quarter of the fiscal year, any projects with incomplete milestones were considered delayed. But quite frankly, there were only about 9 to 10 projects that were delayed due to staff capacity or awaiting onboarding of new staff. The remaining third were actually very close to the finish line and just needed a few extra weeks to kind of wrap up in a bow. So overall, one of the biggest highlights was that, sorry, it's automatic. Oh, did it go too fast? Sorry. Okay. One of the biggest milestones or accomplishments during the last quarter was awarding over 910,000 in local environmental programming grants under Measure Q and Measure T. Now, the second section is our usual profit and loss and balance sheet. So by the end of the fiscal year, the agency expended a little over 14.6 million, and that was about 59% of the approved budget. More details are available in the exhibits, and I can answer any additional questions regarding specific line items. But overall, good year. We actually had the auditors on site in late August, and we're working towards finalizing the audited financials. And the board can expect to see the statements in early November at your meeting. And then on to the last section of the quarterly reports, as required by the investment policy. Monthly statements are provided to the board, at least on a quarterly basis. At the end of the fiscal year, total market value was approximately 13.9 million. We incurred $3,818 in management fees from our investment advisor. Portfolio is generating an average yield to maturity rate of 3.08%, and that was up from 3.06 from last quarter. Earlier last week, I had a quarterly update call with Cara of Chandler Asset Management. That's our investment advisor. She provided the usual economic overview of GDP, unemployment, CPI, inflation. The main takeaway from the economic update was that analysts believe that the Feds won't raise rates at their next meeting coming up, but it's actually up in the air for the last meeting of the year. The goal for the Feds is to have inflation at 2%, and as of June 30th data, it's still around 3.2%. Which kind of leads to a recommendation that our advisor actually recently brought forward to staff. As staff has continuously reminded the board on paper, on our books, per GAAP and GASB rules, we must show the unrealized loss and gain of our investments at a given point in time. So usually either like at a quarter end or a year end. But in reality, the bonds that we have invested in, as long as we hold them to maturity, we theoretically will not lose any principal. We buy a security for $100, we get and let's say it's for a year, we would get the 2 interest payments in the year. At the end of the maturity date, which at the year, we would get $100 back. So it's, in theory, that's what we intend to do. However, Chandler Asset Management, our investment advisor, has actually recommended to staff to sell 2 securities before the maturity date, which effectively would make us realize a loss. They think that rates are as high as they can go, and they'd like us to invest in a few securities with a longer duration, which means like a further out maturity date, which basically would allow us to lock in the high rates that they're seeing right now, instead of just having the maturities, mature, the securities mature, and then having to, at that time, if rates kind of dip, we would then have to like reinvest and repurchase at securities with lower rates. So the thing is, Chandler Asset Management identified 2 securities we could sell prematurely and use the proceeds to reinvest into new securities. And the estimated realized loss is about $3,000. And so based on the explanation that they provided, I'm also recommending that we move forward with absorbing and informing the board that we seek to absorb that $3,000 loss in favor for reinvesting in those in new securities with a higher rate. And the expected outcome is that the interest and dividends that we receive with the new securities at the higher rates would offset the loss that we incur today. And so that's the latest update in terms of investments. Other than that, any questions for Q4?
Any questions? You kind of answered my question. It's like you're taking it out, to lock in the higher rate because rates probably next year will start coming down.
Yeah. So our strategy has always been hold till maturity, but they've identified 2, and the loss, they're keeping it to a minimum.
Right. Thank you for the presentation. Other questions?
There's a potential federal government shutdown looming. So if we're pulling a trigger in the next week or 2, but that's something I would probably want to have things done before that.
Sure.
But that just means unpredictability. I don't know what's going to happen.
Understood. So we actually addressed something like that similarly last quarter, where our investment advisor will procure bonds that don't have a maturity date around the looming shutdown. So that, or at the time it was basically the budget not being passed, so that they can actually get paid. So that we can actually be paid the interest, the coupon payments. Yeah.
And the next item.
I
So
do.
you're not moving. All right, the next item is to review and approve responses to the expenditure plan oversight committee's fiscal year 2021-2022 oversight report.
Okay, so good evening, directors again, Justina Teen, Fiscal Services Officer. As you may recall, the Expenditure Plan Oversight Committee presented their annual oversight report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. So last year, to the board on May 25th of this year, 2023. And at the end of the report, the committee had presented 3 sets of recommendation, and staff has reviewed these recommendations. And I'll briefly kind of summarize each one and follow up with a status update. And the board may feel free to ask any questions or provide any feedback regarding those recommendations. But the goal of tonight's meeting is to provide an update and to seek further input, if any, from the board. And so the first set of recommendations has to do with the review of the expenditures. And their first recommendation was asking staff to provide documentation of the board approval of the allowable administrative expense. Because we only wrote it into the narrative of the report. So staff has taken that into consideration, and in subsequent years, starting with this fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, EPOC, Expenditure Plan Oversight Committee, will receive a copy of the board approved resolution where the board adopts the annual budget, which also notes what's allowed as administrative expenses, the amount to be paid with Measure T revenues. The next set of recommendations has to do with the sampling audit that the committee does. They had one recommendation regarding the internal processes. They recommended staff to carefully monitor the use of Measure Q and Measure T funds in relation to the urban grant programs grants, where if we allow them to purchase permanent assets such as tools, how do we address any risk of that the tools are used for the project, and whether they are keeping it or whatnot. And so staff intends to, having consulted with the grants management team, staff intends to inform the committee that every grant program kind of has their own rules and guidelines, and all the guidelines for using Measure T and Measure Q funds to procure tools directly related to the grant project scope is outlined in the grant program guidelines document that the board approves. And equipment purchases can be used if they're directly attributed to the project. And it could only be for newly acquired. So we're not reimbursing them for tools they already have. And so again, because the grant program itself is competitive and applications are kind of scored, included in the budget, if there's any unusual equipment costs, it will likely raise questions. It'll get addressed during the review process by staff, by CAC, by board. So again, it's more of there will be a piece of an explanation piece to the committee, as well as an educational piece to the committee of how you have our internal controls to manage our grantees' budget and make sure that they're aligned with what the agreement has outlined. The second related sampling recommendation was related to time card and payroll review. So it was a new item that they did last fiscal year, where they wanted to look at how much we spend on labor for a specific project. And so they've asked for, they actually would like to continue auditing labor hours for projects. They want to at least review one project each year. And we actually worked with the committee to develop an effective cover sheet, because the cover sheets that they use to review and check off has always been for hard cost expenditures and never about labor. And so we've kind of modified that cover sheet so that it accommodates auditing and reporting of those project labor hours. And so we've actually been in contact with the committee members, designing a new form that they can use for this fiscal year, for June 30th, 2023 fiscal year's review. And then the last set of recommendations is slightly away from numbers and the expenditures. And they actually took a look at our website, and they made some comments about the kind of not quite accessibility, but where to find things on the website. And they made some comments about that. So we've also will forward the recommendations to the public affairs staff to consider. And if they have any recommendations or solutions that align with the strategic communications plan, as well as board feedback, we would implement as necessary or as feasible. And then with that, those are the only recommendations that the committee had provided this for the fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2022. But does the board have any additional feedback for those recommendations received by the committee, the expenditure plan oversight committee? Would you like to add anything to the responses? They are scheduled to receive this feedback potentially around October, November of this year.
Any comments from the board? No. I recall, I think it was one committee update or something. There was something about making sure that our work was transparent and that we were communicating well. So I have now noticed it's just a comment that if I put something that's the authority is doing, and that Andrea Wheeler is now reposting. So we are doing our best to get, that information, the good news that, the work that we're doing out there. So I think, we just continue to do that, make sure that we're as transparent as possible and making sure that people know some of the good things that are happening.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. And I'll see you guys back in February.
All right. Now we are on committee meeting summaries, administration and budget committee. Who wants to take this one? Nobody? It was a very exciting meeting. We talked about IT.
Would you like a little help?
Sure.
Good evening, directors. Lee Rapture, Assistant General Manager. The ABC meeting this evening, we talked about our IT audit and the progress we've made towards our IT master plan. Co-presented this evening by Justina Teen and Vincent Tran, our IT tech. That is the update.
It was a lively discussion. Director Gill, did you want to provide anything? No?
Actually, I had already asked him many questions and give some suggestions.
He was very engaged in this meeting. Okay, no, but I understand. Yeah, you did an audit and there were several identified areas that you're prepared a strategy to work on, which is great. So, thank you. All right, general manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start with Matt Freeman. Okay.
Good evening, directors. I'm really happy to report that today the State Coastal Conservancy awarded nearly $1.2 million in funding towards the Cuyahoga Valley Conservation Area's master planning process. So this funding is going to support our robust, as we do that, right? It's going to support our robust community engagement efforts, and it's going to help fund development of the master plan document itself. Huge kudos to Megan Drager, Grants Program Manager, and Nick Perry, Cuyahoga Valley Conservation Areas Master Plan Project Manager, for the really outstanding work on this. It's such an important element of our equity goals, right? Facilitating widespread community involvement and engagement in the planning process. That should result in more equitable access for the community and the region trying to access many space lanes. So really great permission.
That's fabulous. Congratulations.
Thanks, Matt. Mark?
Thank you. Good evening, directors. Mark Landgraf, External Affairs Manager. Just a reminder that on October 14th, there will be a community day at the Mayan-Yakima Coyote Ridge Preserve, and information will be going out soon to provide more details, but it's a day for all of us to celebrate with the community opening of the new preserve and what it means for the public. So hope to see you all there. So please say the date.
Lee, do you have any more to report out?
Just very briefly, as you may have caught at the end of Justina's presentation, tomorrow was her last day in the office virtually, and literally she'll be back in February. At least that's what she's promised us. She's done an excellent job cross-training several people in our department to fill key parts of her role while she's away. You'll be seeing Elisa D'Angelo in the next couple of months. Will be helping with some of the board presentations and reports. And then a few of you got the opportunity to meet Vincent earlier. So the team will carry on, and we'll miss you, Justina, but thank you for making it through all of this evening on your phone.
All right.
Good evening. I'll give you some fun updates, hopefully. Got a bunch going on in the sort of wildlife realm. Our partners at Post have received a draft report about the existing conditions of Monterey Road, which of course we're collectively aiming to improve for wildlife across the valley. At the same time, our partners at Post, working with me and others, are looking at improving things at Highway 101 in partnership with Caltrans through some grant funding. So Monterey Road, 101, and then last but not least, staff in response to the unfortunate mountain lion fatality on Santa Teresa has been looking at doing some short-term improvements along Santa Teresa Road based on our North Coyote Valley road ecology study that we received a couple months back. So a small project there that we can do in parallel with our bigger work that is at CB Camp, of course, thinking about that. And then finally, next week, some of our science advisors and regional technical experts are going to be convening here at this office. Thanks, Joelle, to have a focal species workshop where we really think about all the critters that we're trying to care about in Coyote Valley. Also say that down in South Pajaro Agricultural Preserve, our partners at Valley Habitat Agency, as well as Point Blue, have substantially completed a large creek restoration project. I think they'll finish the rough grading tomorrow, and then it's just a whole lot of plants going in after that. So it'll be great to see kids out there getting wet and dirty and planting things. So hopefully that'll be kids will be out there sort of November time. And then much to my delight, seeing Mayan-Yakima opened. We're starting to see that monitoring data. I have this great dashboard thanks to our conservation GIS analyst, Anna. So we're getting that information about how people are using the preserve straight from the OSTs through their phones in front of my computer. So technology is here, and also excited to celebrate our very innovative system, both at a Together Bay Area presentation, I believe, next week or something like that. And then MidPenn has decided they can't get rid of me and want me to come back and share a brown bag presentation about our work at Mayan-Yakima.
I'll back clean up. I just have a couple things. I want to take the advantage while Charlotte, our PIO, is here. Charlotte, would you mind just telling the board a little bit about the response that we've gotten to the Butterfly Pass and some of the social media influencers and press coverage we got for Mayan-Yakima?
Through the chair, good evening, directors. Charlotte Graham, Public Information Officer for the Open Space Authority. We've had a tremendous response from the opening of the new preserve. Over about 1,000 people have already signed up for a Butterfly Pass, which is very exciting. A lot of people are showing up and they get it. They're really excited to hike in the habitat protection area. We held a really neat event that was focused for content creators and teaching them about the nuances of Mayaoyakma Coyote Ridge so that they could reach out to their hundreds of thousands of followers to encourage people to get butterfly passes, to learn the rules of the preserve, and to just come out and enjoy it and know that this is a place for everybody. So we're really excited to continue those relationships and to continue welcoming everybody out to the new preserve. We've got, as Mark mentioned, our community day, a really family-friendly focused event where everyone will be welcome to come out and enjoy. And just in the last few weeks, we've received so much media coverage, over 300 media mentions so far, which is about a 500% increase from last year, which is incredible. So overall, very exciting, and there's more to come. We're still waiting on Bay Nature to do their big story. So we have a lot more excitement that'll take us through the end of the year.
Thanks, Charlotte. Spina Farms is launching its second season of Pumpkin Patch on our Laguna 60 property. September 25th, I think, is the date they open up on Santa Teresa Boulevard in Mid Coyote Valley. And are we taking the UNM committee out there?
UNM and CAC, I believe, on the 28th that week. So they told us wait until we're kind of set up. So 28th.
Anyway, that highly recommended. I think you'll have a lot of fun and pick up a pumpkin while you're out there. Just a couple of other quick things, not this weekend, but next weekend. We're going to be having a presence at Nature's Inspiration, the Green Foothills event. That'll be an opportunity to say farewell to Megan Fluke, who's stepping down as executive director, and Julie Hutchison is taking her place. I think we have a couple tickets left. If the board is interested in going, let Joelle know. And then one other event I wanted to tell you about, kind of a little reluctantly, but this Sunday, the Farm Bureau is holding their summer barbecue and an annual awards. They give out an award for Farmer of the Year and the Linda Lester Friend of Agriculture Award. And I was a little surprised to get a text message from Executive Director Jess Brown at the Farm Bureau saying they would like to present that award to me. So I'm going to go on Sunday and I'm going to accept the Linda Lester Friend of Agriculture Award on behalf of the OSA. And the kind of things that I'm going to say to them is that the OSA has always had a strong commitment to agriculture, starting with some of our early CAC members like Eric Carruthers, and members of our CAC and board who championed ag preservation. I'm going to acknowledge our staff who have just hit it out of the park, partnering with the county to develop the ag plan, working with the state on the natural working lands for climate change, policies we've instituted at the city and county to protect agriculture. We've secured millions of dollars from the state of California to protect agriculture and plan for that. Aaron is going to be creating a agricultural program specialist position in his department. So we're really kind of going on all cylinders with respect to agriculture, and it's really nice to have the Farm Bureau recognize that we're friends, not foe. And I think the first thing I'll say is I'm here from the government and we're here to help.
Only took us 30 years.
That completes my report, Madam Chair.
Congratulations, and it's well deserved. Okay, legal counsel.
No report, Madam Chair.
What? No.
Surprise.
All right, board members. So we'll start Director Gill.
No report either.
Okay, Director Potter. Director Aleknish.
I thoroughly enjoyed coming to the Mayan Oyakma opening on
August 29th.
It was great in the Bay Area Ridge Trail dedication, a lot of Bay Area Ridge Trail people there, a lot of excitement. It was just great to see. So I'm looking forward to going and hiking there.
Okay, my report, life has not stood still, so I'm gonna try and do this really fast. The last LAFCO meeting was quite interesting, if anybody wasn't following it, but, just to let you know that there was an annexation proposal that has been in the wings for the last 2.5 years. The LAFCO commission decided to split the parcels, so the south channel below Tatum, is annexed and the other part is not. Gilroy. I'm not getting up first. I think the south part is not annexed and the other part is. So it's something to watch because the applicant came forward with a compelling argument about the need that agriculture wasn't viable. And I think after the presentations we had here, I think it means we still have a lot of work to do. And I believe they will be back. The next LAFCO meeting is next October 2nd, and they're going to be doing the service review, the fire rate service review, which I understand is going to be another long meeting. There's a lot of comments on that, so something to keep on. Special districts, big kudos to Carolyn. You put on a great meeting. We hosted the special district meeting. Okay, both of you, yay. We hosted the special district meeting here. Because we were kind of go around the different special districts to get an idea of what each district does. Mark Landgraf gave an excellent presentation. And I think that we had a good discussion from various members of the special district that probably didn't know some of the things that we did. It spurred a lot of discussions, and I hope we encourage some more stronger partnerships with them. And then probably, I also attended the Bay Area Ridge Trail grand opening. That was a lot of fun. So that's it.
I would just like to add compliments to staff and the design of the staging area. I had not seen the plans for it. And I mean, it's just first class. And this makes me really proud of not only our 3,000 acres, but how many bigger job that you folks can do. So it was a great day and
Director Plummer.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry I missed the opening of Ivy Ridge Preserve. I was out of town. A little bit of a road trip up to the Tacoma area. And while I was up there, I took a drive east to see Mount Rainier. And other than below 5,000 feet, cloud and rain, the density of the forests up there are just, you can't even walk through them. There's so much things on the ground. It was quite impressive. And then when I came back, I came through the middle part of Washington, Oregon, on the eastern side of the Cascades. And it's open land like you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe you're in Oregon and Washington. It's so different. It's quite impressive, as well as things like the Columbia Gorge and other things. So it was a real nice thing to get out and look at other people's areas of interest in conservation.
Director King.
All of you have one of these? I'm gonna embarrass you right here. So while he was up in Washington, I was up in Portland at the Land Trust Alliance meeting in Portland. And joined, I guess, 8 members of the staff, got to know everyone a little bit better. And attended several workshops. I asked that my workshops be focused on climate resiliency, change, ag, and, everything, rethinking farming and housing ownership, some of which were very interesting. And so I appreciate being able to go. Be able to go again. I was at one in Denver, I guess, in 2017. But this one was very much better attended. So also while he was looking at Mount Rainier, I was looking at Mount Hood. And while we were freezing here, they were getting rain in Oregon instead of snow. There wasn't a drop, there wasn't a fleck of snow on Mount Hood, which is very unusual. But again, there wasn't on Lassen, Shasta either. So anyway, that's what I do in my spare time.
And I understand we have one more closed session item, so at this point.
Yes, Madam Chair, we're going to reconvene the closed session for item number 2 on the closed session agenda, which is a conference with real profit negotiator.
Okay, great. All right, so we will adjourn to the second closed session for tonight.
Sorry, I figured we.
All right, where's everybody? 1, 2, 3, Otter,
Fred.
Otter. There we go. Okay, we're back. Are there any reportable actions?
Verbal actions, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. We are now adjourned.